So this is my second brain. And I love looking at this graph because it feels like I'm literally looking at my brain. Like I'm literally looking at the topology of my brain, how every thought kind of connects to one another. Okay. So a couple of months ago, I was scrolling through my Instagram feed and there were people talking about an Obsidian and Claude second brain. And I was just like, I have to figure out what this is. So here's the explanation that I wish I had going into this. So just to give you a quick background of where this second brain idea even came from. It actually came from a book called Building a Second Brain. And this guy, Tiago Forte, wrote it. So the main thesis is your brain is for generating ideas, not storing them. So you offload the ideas into an external system that you trust. So your brain can stop regenerating the same thoughts over and over. So I actually bought his book, right? I actually bought his book some time ago and I read it and I found it quite relatable because here's something that I personally go through. I think a lot, like all the time. There's just a lot of brain activity going on up here. And sometimes I'll have a genuinely good insight about how I work, what I need, what I should do differently. And then I'll just put it into my Apple Notes or my Notion, but then I forget about it because it gets buried under a bunch of notes. And so the next time I hit the exact problem where the idea I had could really fix it, I don't even remember that I had that idea. So then when I started seeing these videos online about having a second brain built using Claude and Obsidian, I thought, whoa, this could be for me. But personally, I felt like these videos either talked about the why without talking about the how, or it talked about the how without talking about the why. So the thing that finally made it click for me was reading this write-up by Andre Carpati. Andre Carpati is one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and he wrote this gist talking about his second brain. Well, does he call it second brain? He doesn't actually call it second brain. That's so funny. But he calls it his wiki. Okay, so listen to this. Most people's experience with LLMs and documents looks like RAG. You upload a collection of files, the LLM retrieves relevant chunks at query time and generates an answer. The idea here is different. Instead of just retrieving from raw documents at query time, the LLM incrementally builds and maintains a persistent wiki. So what is RAG? All right, first let's imagine the situation. Imagine you have like a bunch of documents. When you ask AI a question about these documents, AI is gonna quickly scan these pile of documents and it's gonna pull out the pages that are most likely to be relevant to your question. And it only reads those pages before it answers. It never actually reads the whole thing. It just grabs what seems useful in the moment. So the reason why we just use this is because from the user's perspective, it's an easy setup. You just toss documents into a folder or into a location, and then you just say, hey, AI, please look at this location, and then tell me some insights. So it's easy for the user to set up. Okay, but here is the big limitation of RAG. It doesn't learn relationships. It it doesn't learn about connections between documents. So maybe this document, document A, is actually related to this document, document C. And when you perform a RAG search, there is no guarantee that AI will identify this relationship between document A and C. And even if it does identify it, it doesn't learn it. So the next time you use another AI chat, they will not recognize this relationship. So, what if we had a way to develop that relationship? What if we had these relationships that show how these documents are linked to one another, and the AI can recognize these links and is able to connect these ideas and recognize the patterns across these documents? So this is the whole point of this whole graph, okay? So each of these little dots are documents. They are notes that I've typed down. And so, for example, if I ask AI, hey, could you tell me like about sleep? So it could go to any random node, let's say the home, and then it's gonna see, wait a minute, there is a link to sleep right there. There's a link to sleep. Okay, and wait a minute, sleep is also connected to his bodybuilding prep. And his bodybuilding prep is also connected to his overall vision for his life. So that's what this write-up is talking about. Most people will just dump documents into their AI or their LLM, and then the AI performs the RAG search, right? But the LLM is rediscovering knowledge from scratch on every question. There's no accumulation. The LLM incrementally builds and maintains the wiki. So, like, for example, all these notes that I've made, so if we click into any one, like home, I did not write this. I told Claude about me, and Claude wrote this up about me, and it's gonna help you develop those connections, right? Like, here are all the connections. Like, it's literally just links to other notes. It's just links to other nodes. The wiki is a persistent compounding artifact. The word compounding really caught my attention because this is something that will, over time, just like the benefits and the returns are gonna soar through the roof. So if you're interested in doing a second brain, I definitely encourage you to read this first. This is like the inception of the Claude and Obsidian idea. All the other YouTube videos online are really just talking about this thing. Let's talk a little bit about the tool choices. It says here it is designed to be copy pasted to your own LLM agent, whether that be OpenAI, Claude, or whatever. So this is supposed to be a tool agnostic setup, but why are we using Obsidian and why are we using Claude? Because Obsidian is really just a bunch of markdown files with links, something that an AI can directly own and maintain. They're all just markdown files, they're text files. So look, if I just go into one of these notes, what was the one that we were looking at? It's called home. So if I just look for home right here, okay, I can open it with like a text editor. So like this one. Look, that's all that is. It's just text. That's all it is. So now we know why Obsidian, but why Claude? So it doesn't have to be Claude, it just has to be some sort of LLM that can edit your files for you. And one of those would be Claude Cowork and Claude Code. These are agents that are able to go into files in your computer, so it's able to go to those markdown files and then edit it for you. I personally use Claude because it's my choice of AI, but you could use something like ChatGPT Codex because that will edit your files for you as well. So for my personal second brain, I use Claude Cowork, and this is why. Before the second brain setup, I was already talking to Claude a lot, walking it through my ideas and trying to get feedback on it. But then the problem is these conversations would disappear. Claude would forget about these conversations sometimes, and they just weren't being documented anywhere. So now at the end of a conversation, I say, hey, can we write that up into the wiki? And then it becomes a markdown file and is linked to my other markdown files. And that is great because it requires zero extra effort from me, which I think is actually quite important for this second brain thing. Because remember, this is a compounding system. That means in day one, it's not gonna blow your mind, but maybe in day 100 it will. But in order for you to get to day 100, this system should not take a monumental amount of effort. It should be minimal effort so it is sustainable and it does not require willpower and it does not die halfway through. So let me do an example. I just come into Claude Cowork and I'll just point it to my second brain folder and I'll just ask it any questions. I could just say like, hey, tell me how my second brain looks like. And literally anything. But for demo purposes, it might be better to use one of these prompts because this is going to show you the power of a second brain. I'm going to use this prompt right here. Read all the notes in my wiki, then tell me what recurring themes appear. Are there contradictions? What questions come up repeatedly but stay unresolved? And what's missing? I'm just gonna copy that in. So like it's reading up my wiki right now. And it's literally pulling on those connections that we saw just now. All right, so we have a response. So let's go through this first one. I think this is interesting to go through with y'all. Environment as the master variable. So it's pointing out to me that across my notes and reflections, one thing that always comes up is how I'm affected by my environment. Across like my life, like when I was living in Pittsburgh, when I was choosing between working at a co-working space and working at home, and when I was preparing for a bodybuilding competition, my environment, I was literally the product of my environment. Let's go through this one as well. Like this is interesting. So it's telling me that in my notes, there's this note called trusting your gut, and it points out something about me. I just absorb things that are around me. And so when the people around me don't believe in me, I literally absorb that and then I start to not believe in myself as well. But then in another note, called the system thinker, it reframes it. The sponge isn't the problem. Unmanaged absorption is. If you just absorb everything, that's bad. But if you choose what to absorb, that is good. So it's telling me that, hey, like both these notes are true, but you haven't described when to deliberately absorb things versus when to guard yourself from absorbing negative things. So this is where I'm at. I'm only 4 days in, and I wouldn't say that it changed my life. That would be a lie, but at the same time, like it does point these things out to me that I would never have thought about. It can point out contradictions in my thinking, and then I can start to work through it and then bake those solutions into my second brain so that I can refer to it in the future. And so finally, I just want to go through my GitHub repo. And this is not like a definitive guide. This is just like documentation, really. But to me, this whole second brain thing was just this really mystical thing that everyone claimed to be doing. And what I really needed was somebody to show me what it actually was, what it cost, and what came out. So this is kind of like me giving that to past me. This is a quick start, and you can follow along the quick start if you want. I'll tell you how I personally did it. What I did was I installed Obsidian into my laptop, and then there is a way to import your Notion notes and your Apple notes into Obsidian, and probably from any software really, like even Evernote or anything like that. So this is kind of what it looks like once you import it into your Obsidian. So at this point, it's still like a bulk import and there are no connections. So it's still performing that RAG search that we talked about. But then that's when like I literally just talk to Claude Cowork and I say, hey, can you build these connections that I've been hearing about? Can you go online and search for GitHub repos and see what people are doing with their second brains and try to implement it into my own personal second brain? So it's literally like I'm just like talking to Claude and figuring it out along the way. And then like I just talked all the way until I developed like this second brain. And I'm gonna keep talking to it and I'm gonna keep developing it. It's literally just vibe coding. That's literally all it is. All right, that was the second brain. So, hey, if you guys found this helpful or interesting, drop a like, drop a comment, tell me what happened if you decided to do this. And yeah, like I'll keep working on this and I'll probably post another video in the future about an update. All right, man.